So let's do a recap of what we've been learning in this series on the intersection between native wisdom and non-duality, so that we can kind of put it all together and start moving on to some action steps to how does non-duality help us enter this native wisdom state? How do we change one worldview for the other? Can it be done efficiently and easily? And what I'm saying is yes. Yes, it can. If we really, really look at where our worldview came from, it makes it a lot easier to switch it to the natural state where we just want to reside, naturally reside when we don't have the crust of civilization on top of us. So we just kind of started talking about, how these two things intersect. And then we took non-duality teachings, and instead of having the basic idea of getting rid of our thoughts, we realized that thoughts are formed from language, that it's really just language going through our heads, kind of in a little repeat loop. It's a natural, normal thing to do. That is how our brains are formed. That's what makes us be human beings. Language is a natural thing for us to learn and to invent. Language evolves. Language has limits, huge limits, particularly our modern languages that divide everything into pieces. There's an apple over there, there's a guitar over there. We see the division of things more than we see the way they are interconnected, simply because that is the way our language structure is formed. Easy to get out of that. So I think, I don't know, how do I know? You're going to have to tell me. I think it's way easier to deal with your mind if you realize that's just language. You know how when you meditate and your thoughts are just going, it's like, I got to get rid of my thoughts, and you can't get rid of your thoughts. Well, if instead you're just like, oh, that's just language, that's not me, it can just go, 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 do whatever it wants to do. Maybe you'll sit there meditating and figure something out. It's going to be very useful to your life. So language, that's really what's going through your head. Then we started talking about history and the way we tell our history stories, how it has turned us into a very isolated vision of ourselves. Our history comes from the fact that we've become broken. We're not living in this native worldview anymore. And so we're confused. Because we're confused, we're easily controlled. And because we're easily controlled, we fall into hierarchy because we want someone else to save us. We feel safer if someone else is in charge. So if they're telling them, especially if they're telling us, follow me and you'll be safe. So we fall into these hierarchies and we become weak and able to be controlled. And then our whole history is the history of people who are following this hierarchy to our destruction. It's not making us safer. So when we start rewriting our history, it's so easy to do. All we have to do is just put ourselves on the actual timeline that happened. History did not start with the written word. History did, like what year was that? Maybe 2000 BC? History certainly did not start at the year 0, right? We know that people were around before that, but we know that that's just a sliver, the tiniest sliver of human history, because human beings have been our fully evolved human beings for 60,000 years. And before that, we were almost us for, they're even saying 1,000,000 years, but definitely 200,000 years. Huge long time, generations of people. And the stories tell us that, oh, those people way back in the day, they were living these terrible, miserable lives. No, they weren't. They were living fabulous, wonderful lives. Watch a little squirrel running through the forest. Does it look miserable? No, it's a little squirrel. It's running around. Back when we were even pre-humans, we weren't miserable. We were doing good. Then we started taking the whole thing and we brought in babies. Because in order for us to be what we are, babies had to always be able to thrive. How did the human baby survive all those thousands and thousands of years ago before we had strollers and pacifiers and and we started realizing that native wisdom again is telling us how this was, because what evolved first was the human community that was able to nourish and support and take care of the mother and take the babies and take care of these babies, because the human brain would not have been able to get bigger unless all the babies were taken care of as they became being born more and more premature. So you went from having a baby, small little baby that could take care of itself pretty quickly, add on a couple more months of care, you added a huge complication that could only be solved by lots of people taking care of this baby. Put a baby into a state where it's really being born, 6 months early, a year. Human babies don't even really grow until they're a year. So then we started getting this sense of human beings' ability to care for each other. And we started getting a picture of this natural bubble of care that all of us grow in, live in. And we started realizing you are not a baby anymore. Maybe you did not get raised in a totally nurturing situation. Well, you are now the fully grown adult, and you are the one that is providing this nurturing for this bubble of care that so easily and naturally exists between human beings. And it is just as fulfilling to be the adult providing this care as it is to be the baby receiving the care. So now we've put ourselves into a place where we realize that our brains work perfectly fine and naturally. We have language that's maybe a little complicated to use, but within this structure of this worldview, we can become a fully awake human being. If we get rid of this history of how horrible people are and start realizing that we are this amazingly integrated, conscious, awake person, it's easier for us to start dropping the crust of our false imagined existence and start becoming this fully ripe human being that we're all meant to be. So that's a little bit of a recap. We're going to start working into a couple of weeks where we're going to work on, what do we actually do? So first of all, we're going to talk about some of the traps, things to not do. Because of course this is non-duality, so we always have to talk about what's not existing first. And then we're going to go into a full week of how to reach the non-dual state.